The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. If you would please rise as you are able and give your attention to Councilwoman Clear for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pastor Ollie J. Johnson, Jr. is a proud pastor of the New Jerusalem Missionary Baptist Church of Topeka, Kansas, located at 1018 Southeast 8th Avenue. Pastor Johnson has served as senior pastor for the past 2 years. He and his beautiful wife have 2 children and 3 grandchildren. He and First Lady Johnson recently celebrated 35 years of marriage. And Pastor Johnson has expertise in civil rights. He's a licensed mediator, business development, human relations department expert, and help bridge the gap between the community and local police.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we just thank you, oh Father, for this time. Lord, we ask, oh God, that you bless this leadership. Oh Father God, we ask that you allow them to work harmoniously with one another. Oh Lord, we ask that you guide their footsteps and Lord, guide all of their decisions. Father God, we praise you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Johnson. There are no proclamations this evening. We do have a presentation. If the interim city manager would please introduce.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Good evening to the body. We have kind of a rare treat tonight. We have an ex-employee, our former chief of prosecution, Mr. Chuck Kitt, and he has agreed to come forward and talk about his time in prosecution, particularly as it relates to code enforcement, and illustrate some of the progress that we believe we've made in this very vital issue. So I'd like to ask Mr. Kitt to come forward and enlighten us.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, governing body, Mr. Gerber, thank you. I came back, obviously, I think everybody's aware that my last day with the city was last Friday, but I spoke with Mr. Gerber and Lisa about doing a kind of an in-cap presentation on code enforcement, what's happened over the last 16 months since I was initially hired by the city. So I put together kind of a position paper for Lisa going through the entire history, and I just wanted to recap that for the council. Code enforcement, what it really comes down to is urban decay, blight. It's called many different names. Property values decrease. There's wear and tear to different property structures, homes, overgrowth, vegetation's allowed to get out of control. What that does for cities, obviously we all know it raises the potential of crime rates. When you have abandoned property, that draws a certain criminal element. It obviously is unsafe for the inhabitants of the property. If they're not weather tight, it could lead to mold, leaking pipes, not having heat, not having air conditioning in the summer, that sort of thing. And overall, not only does it reduce the quality of life and have the potential to attract a criminal element, it reduces property values. So there's many negatives that come from urban decay and blight. Topeka has faced several of these challenges, and I thought it was important to go over just briefly kind of the history of what led us to kind of the breaking point, which is where I think we were at a few years ago. We face things that many cities across the nation face. The housing bubble that began in late 2007 and continued through, well, some say we're still not completely recovered from it. We also have what's commonly known as urban sprawl, where cities grow too fast for their population. We've had instances of that here in Topeka. I looked at the census data from 1970. Topeka's population was 125,000. Census data from 2010 were 127,000. So we had very minimal growth in population, yet our geographic growth was quite substantial. So what that means is more public works, more money being spread a little more thin. Maybe our streets aren't as repaired as well as they used to be, sewer lines, water lines, that sort of thing. All that leads to more decay. So Topeka has faced those challenges just like every city across America, but we've faced some pretty unique challenges. It started, my look back, I just went back the last 60, 70 years. In 1951, obviously, we had the flood where the river came out of its banks. Looking at the historical data, roughly $34 million in property damage just here in Topeka. In 1966, we had the F5 tornado. They estimated the damages of that to property here in Topeka were $250 million. It's still one of the most damaging tornadoes recorded here in the United States. In 1993, we had more flooding, roughly $1 billion in property damage across the state of Kansas. A good portion of that was here in Topeka. As recent as 2007, we had more flooding, roughly between 5 and 6 million in property damage. So we've had natural disasters that have destroyed property here in Topeka. We've also had economic issues. 1973 and 74 with the closing of the air base. More than 17,000 people employed there at one time. Overnight, we lost 10,000 jobs. People lost their jobs and either moved away, abandoning their property, or stayed in their property and could no longer afford their property. And when they can't afford the property, it's not being upkept. We had several other loss of job type things happen to Topeka. For instance, we've had major railroads leave the city, railroad lines redirected around the city. We had the Topeka State Hospital in 1997 closed. We had the Menninger Clinic that relocated, Hallmark, Jostens. We've had major employers that have either greatly reduced in size or left the city altogether. So we've had many unique challenges here in Topeka. And when you couple that with kind of sporadic code enforcement, we had piecemeal codes in place to address certain parts of urban decay, but we didn't have a comprehensive plan in place. When you couple that with sporadic enforcement by our inspectors, sporadic enforcement through the legal department, through prosecution, we really were left with a city on the brink. And I think in 2014 was kind of the culmination of the turning point, because in July of 2014, after months and months of public comment and debate, the city adopted the 2012 version of the International Property Maintenance Code. The adoption of the code was a huge step forward. There was a lot of legwork that went into that from the legal department, from council, from various neighborhood groups, putting together a comprehensive list. And we didn't just adopt the 2012 IPMC. We made changes that were unique that fit our city. The problem is we still faced a lot of inconsistency with enforcement. We adopted the IPMC, but there was not a comprehensive plan for enforcing it. Our code inspectors, I think at one point in time we had up to 12 or 14 members of that unit going out and inspecting, but there was never uniform training on the IPMC. They were given this booklet, said this is what we have, go enforce it, without much guidance. So what you ended up with were different inspectors interpreting law in different ways, giving inconsistent inspections, how they did the inspection, through no fault of their own. They just had never received any training on what needed to be done. When I took over in October of 2015, when I took over the prosecution department, I spent a lot of time listening to people talk about code enforcement. It was obviously a priority for citizens, for the council, for the mayor's office, the city manager's office, the legal department. It was a priority. So I went around and spoke to all of those groups. I spoke to neighborhood groups, NIA groups, just went out and talked, but I did a lot of listening too. What's the problem? What I heard was inconsistent inspection, inconsistent prosecution, inconsistent results in court, if any results. And I looked back at the history of that, and from the time the IPMC was adopted in 2014, there had been a lot of turnover in the prosecutor's office. So it was really at nobody's fault. There just hadn't been somebody that really took that challenge on and helped actually implement the IPMC. We had it on the books, but nobody actually implemented it. So one of the first things I did was I started training with our code enforcement officers. I met with Mike Haugen, Richard Faulkner, and Sasha over at Neighborhood Relations. And I see that we have several of our code inspectors
Please
here.
speak this way
Oh, I'm
because
sorry.
we can't hear you when you turn
Sure.
around.
I was just pointing to the back. We have several of our code inspectors, the members that I've been working with. They're present. They came over to hear the presentation tonight. These are great individuals that work very hard. And we started doing weekly trainings where we would just pick portions of the code and go over it. This is what this means. This is how it needs to be enforced. Some of the inconsistencies I would see would be there would be a complaint from a citizen about a house that had, and I'm just going to use peeling paint as an example because it's easy to see from the street. Code enforcement would go out and cite that house for the peeling paint and might ignore 10 other violations that were fairly obvious once you got up next to that property. One of the things we focused on was if you're going to go out and inspect a property, inspect the property for all the violations. And now our inspections are taking place from a public place, the street, sidewalk, a neighbor's property with consent, or the actual property itself if we have consent or a search warrant. And I worked with code enforcement on getting search warrants where it was needed, getting the consent forms approved where we could actually go out and have people sign those and allow us to go onto their property. But we worked on consistency. If you see 12 violations on a property, cite all 12 violations. That way that when that homeowner comes to court, they know exactly what they're facing and they're not just here on one violation only to turn around and have another one next week and another one next month. Let's deal with it all right then. And we also, and this was through Mike Haugen and Sasha, we also implemented a policy that we're not just going to inspect the thing that we're there for, the complaint that was made. We're going to look at the neighbors' properties. When we're out there for this violation, we're going to look around that neighborhood. Instead of spending all this drive time just going out, looking at one thing, we're going to look at the whole neighborhood and start issuing violations to everything that we see. Start really getting wider areas of the city. The main thing was we wanted to be persistent. We weren't going to give up on going after these violations. We wanted to be consistent in how we were going after them, and we wanted compliance. The end goal was compliance. Meeting with Sasha, I spent a lot of time with her and Mike just talking about who are our violators in this city. And we really broke it down into 5 categories of properties, of violations. We had income properties. A landlord that owned 5 or 6 properties or more, that they were using this either to draw rental income off of, or they were using it because they thought property values would go up and they could resell it in a few years. They were income properties. And the reason those violations existed is because you put in the minimal amount of money so you can get your maximum return on the property. That was kind of the attitude. That was our first category. Our second category was the absent owner. People that lived out of state, might have inherited a property, had no interest in the property, or one day they just maybe went through a divorce and walked away from the property. They were just absent, did not care about the property, weren't trying to make money off of it, but they weren't going to upkeep it. Our third group was the owner-occupied, the people that were, for some reason, not capable of repairing their property. Maybe age, disability, income. Something in their life was preventing them from keeping up their property. Not that they didn't want to, they just couldn't. The fourth group were the owner-occupied that refused to make the repairs. These are the people that, the city's not going to tell me what to do with my property. I'm not going to fix it because I don't want to. And then the fifth was probably the largest group, and that is the unaware owners, the people that just didn't understand the violations on their own property, would get notices in the mail and didn't understand what it meant or what had to be done to fix it, or really what the next step was. And I really saw that in the 15 months that I was doing this, that was the largest group, the people that just didn't understand the code, didn't understand what needed to be done. So when we developed our mission statement, compliance being the ultimate objective, persistent, consistent compliance. That's what we wanted. We had to look at those 5 categories and decide, how do we get compliance, knowing that we have these 5 different categories of people. And the policy that prosecution developed was, if it was a first-time offender and it was a violation that did not affect somebody's, it wasn't an emergent condition that affected their life or their health. If it was a first-time offender and they fixed the violation, we would dismiss the case with no costs or fees to them. They showed up to court, were explained the violation, and if they were willing to fix it and did fix it without any delay, we would dismiss the case. If it was a repeat offender, somebody that I'd seen twice on the code docket, then we were going to ask for fines and fees. We were going to make them fix the property, and then once the property was fixed and we had compliance, then we would issue them a fine only. We would require a plea or a trial because we weren't going to dismiss that case. If it was a situation where it was something that affected the life of in a case of a tenant who's renting the property and their landlord didn't provide them heat or air conditioning in the summer, or maybe had a roof that was leaking very bad, that's something that the penalties would go up. For every repeat offender, penalties would go up. For the worse the condition, the penalties would go up. That was kind of our philosophy. And in the last 15 months, I can tell you that it worked. In the 15 months from the time the code was adopted in July of 2014 until I started, so July of 14 through September of 15, the city attorney's office filed 231 code cases. When I took over, there was a backlog of 300 to 400 code cases on my desk that I had to work through. Of the cases that were filed, I think 10 of them resulted in convictions. The remainder had to be dismissed because they were not legally sufficient. Notice hadn't been served properly, if at all. Of the backlog, the majority of those had to be dismissed, and that was or not filed. And that was one of the things I worked with code enforcement on. Let's tighten this up. Let's fix our service, not only because that allows us to go forward in court, but also most of the time if we fix service, people actually get that and then start asking questions. What do I need to do? And oftentimes the case would never have to come to court because the property had already been fixed within the time allotted. 231 cases filed in the 15 months before I started. In the 15 months that I worked at the city attorney's office, we filed, and I forget the exact numbers, 573 code cases. In 2016 alone, we filed 451 cases just in that 12-month period. That resulted in 31 convictions, and of the 451 cases that were filed, 353 we obtained compliance on. And that is the city forcing the owners on their own labor, their own cost to go out and fix their properties. So 353 cases, and the only reason we didn't reach 451 is because some of those cases are still pending. Some of those cases were filed in October, November, December, and just haven't gone through the code docket yet. So I expect that all 451 will have compliance on, because we have been successful in every case that we have filed that's been legally sufficient. We've been able to get compliance on. So and I've mentioned the code docket. That was another thing that we set up when I started. Our first code docket was in November of 2015. We've had it every week, every Wednesday, 8:30 in the morning. There's 25 to 30 code cases that are heard by the same prosecutor, same judge. That way we can develop some consistency. That was another problem. You had, of the 25,000 cases filed in municipal court, there's a couple hundred code cases, so a very small percentage. That's divided between 28 different dockets in municipal court, 6 prosecutors, 4 attorneys, 2 interns, and 2 judges. So as you can see, that's a very small percentage. One prosecutor may only see 1 code case per week, or may not see one for an entire month. So by developing the code docket, we were able to get the same prosecutor, the same judge, and develop a history and some consistency in the enforcement, and it's worked. So I guess the message that I wanted to really relay to the council is that it's not, the system of enforcement's not perfect. There's always room for improvement, and I know the city attorney's office is working on ways we can streamline the process to make it go quicker, to get better compliance, faster. So it is a work in progress, and there's always going to be things that we can improve on. But code enforcement is in a different place today than it was prior to 2014 with the adoption of the IPMC. And you can listen to horror stories of citizens all day long, all night long, about what happened to them 10 years ago and 15 years ago and 20 years ago. And it's sad. It's sad that they didn't get a better response from the city. But that culture has changed. The folks that are in the back of the courtroom have a lot to do with that, our code enforcement officers. So Mr. Gerber told me that I was going to, one more thing. I've put up here, we have the performance portal. I almost forgot to bring this up. The performance portal is on the city's website, and we now have the ability to go online and track code cases. And so what you'll see on this, that 139 cases, that's the number of cases that were filed in the fourth quarter of 2016. And you can look at that graph as you go across. In July of 2015, we were filing very few. In October is when I started at the city, and you can see our numbers went up and they've stayed up. And it shows on this page, you'll see how many cases were where compliance was obtained just in the calendar year. You'll see how many resulted in conviction. That the conviction, these are the important stats, what I think are important to keep track of. Number of cases filed, number of cases where compliance was obtained, and convictions. And the reason I think convictions are important is not because that's the goal, is to convict people, but the convictions tell you how many people were repeat offenders, or how many people were adamant they weren't going to fix their property, or how many people had serious violations that needed to be corrected to protect people's health and safety. Those are the people that get convicted. The people that are first-time offenders, their cases get dismissed with no costs or fees as long as they've fixed their property. And on this performance portal, not only will you be able to track these numbers every quarter and look back and see what's been done, but the process of how code enforcement works is there's a brief overview of that with some other links and stats there. So this is a very good tool to help keep you, the governing body, the citizens aware of what's going on in code enforcement. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation and for the background and giving us a much better understanding of progress, the changes that have been implemented. They're very important, very vital, and I know all of us have firsthand experience with hearing from constituents on code issues. And we're so pleased and excited to hear the changes, the things that you're doing now, that you have done and helped to oversee. Council members, other comments? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a quick question for you. I appreciate all the work you have done to get the capacity up. My understanding is we have thousands of code issues in this city, and I'm wondering what could we do to double, triple the capacity, the ability to work these faster? I mean, at even 500 cases a year, if we have 2,000 code violations in the city, that's 4 years of work. How can we make the process faster or have more capacity, if all else?
The issue with making it faster is it's a due process issue. When you see a violation, we can't just go onto somebody's property and either fix it or take away their rights by putting them in jail or fining them. We have to give them notice, and we have to give them an opportunity to appeal that notice, to have a hearing on it, and determine whether they actually are in violation. And that process takes time. There's not much else that can be done to speed up how fast a case can be processed. As far as capacity, one thing to remember, at one point, like I said, the number was around 12 or 14 inspectors. Right now, we currently have 8 inspectors for housing violations. So when you think about the work that goes into citing a case, the inspector hears a complaint, drives out, inspects that property, inspects the properties around there, writes up the notice, tracks down the owner, serves the owner. Then we wait the waiting period. Then there's a reinspection to see if it's been fixed. If it hasn't been fixed, then it comes to the prosecution division to charge. So there is a lot of contact that has to be made by that code inspector. And when you factor in that there's 8 people, if you want to increase capacity, there's probably other ways to do it, but it really comes down to bodies, the number of inspectors that we have.
So you think-
And I will say that all of our inspectors are either IPMC certified now or in the process of getting IPMC certified, which that certainly helps because the more efficient they are at their job, obviously, the more they can do. So
in your opinion, the bottleneck, if there is one, is just with the number of inspectors we have and the workload that each of them has to undertake?
I know that they have an impossible task. They're not going to be able to solve the issue of blight in the city with 8 people. But we've made a lot of progress. Like I said,
Absolutely.
350 cases, and that's over one property per day that is no longer in violation. So I understand, with thousands of cases or violations, that's going to take a long time to fix. But,
Sure. Well, we've got a good start.
Right.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say we've come a long way. We're not where we need to be, but we've come a long way. When I first got on council, we would have one inspector go do housing, one inspector go do nuisance, and now they've been cross-trained so that one inspector can write up all the violations. I ask this time and time again. I know there's one area of town that doesn't have as many violations as my district, and I always ask, how come we can't pull a couple of times that inspector to come over and do massive? And I know we've done this, just do massive, like we went through Highcrest and done a massive and pulled everybody on certain days. And I'd like to see us continue to do that. I don't understand why we can't do that to hit some of those areas harder than others. And I think you hit the nail right on the head with number 5, unaware owners. And I think that's up to us. And I've even talked to Sasha, and she's put in the newsletters, did you know? You can't have that couch on the porch, because people don't know these things. And I think it's up to us to work with the homeowners and educate them. And I will continue to scream that from this corner. We need to educate them and then work with them and give them prompt time. Right now it's hard. They can't get out there and paint. And I'll be talking to Sasha about a lady that I thought we were working with, but they ended up taking her to court. I don't get that. When you're in contact with that owner and they're telling you, I'm doing everything that I can, why are we still taking them to court? I just don't get it. But we've come a long way. We have a long way to go. But I think for this council, and I'd like to applaud all our inspectors. I go to my NIA meetings and I hear the complaints, and they jump on it. They're quick and they're good, and they're working with the officers to make sure that things are done. But there's a lot out there, and I think it's our duty to see if we can get them more help, but also see if we can continue to educate those however we plan to do it, because there's a lot of violations out there. And I tell people, and they're like, oh, let me hurry up and get that done. They don't know because we've changed. So thank you for all you've done, Chuck. You've done an excellent job. Hate to lose you because you came over and you jumped right in, but you've been a big asset, and we appreciate you.
Okay, let's keep it down. We've got a long meeting ahead of us yet. Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to be real quick. You have done a very good job, because when I was first on the council about 4 years ago, I used to get a call once a week in District 7, Southwest Topeka. I'm not getting those calls, so I know that you're doing a better job. And I know we still have those code problems in District 7. One just made the news and it got resolved, and I really appreciate that. My question is, there was one category that you left out, and that was the foreclosures. I used to get calls about a bank foreclosing. The neighbors were unhappy with what was going on, and nothing could be done. Has that changed?
The foreclosures are definitely more difficult. One of the main things that I focused on was, when was the notice served on the person, and did the foreclosure happen before, during, or after that notice period? If it happened if the foreclosure happened before, obviously, I don't think it would be fair to hold the property owner responsible for something they had no longer had any control over. If the foreclosure happened after the notice had already been given, my personal opinion and what I practiced was they had a chance to fix it and they didn't. So that may not be a person that's going to go to jail because they're not going to be able to bring it into compliance now, but they're certainly going to be held accountable when they come to municipal court. But tracking down these properties once the banks get a hold of them again, that's not an easy issue to solve. And I can tell you, no, it has not been solved
Okay.
because
All right, we're good. Any other questions, quick comments? Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. We've known that it was a big job to tackle. One of the big things we needed was consequences and a system, so I appreciate your improvements to that system.
there's a lot of room to go.
Well, again, thank you very much for your service to the city. It's very important, very vital, your contributions, and best wishes in your new position.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Mr.
City
Mayor,
Manager.
I know we're wrapping this up, but just as a final comment, I didn't say this from the beginning, but I specifically didn't meet with Mr. Kipp prior to this presentation because I wanted him to present his thoughts without my bias in them. He doesn't have to answer to us anymore, and so he can feel free to say what he thinks, and I think he's done that for you. Additionally, I think we anticipate bringing this issue back to council for continued discussion in the near future, maybe focusing less on prosecution but on the enforcement piece. We regard it as a sort of a three-legged stool with compliance in the middle, education, enforcement, and prosecution.
Good.
So,
I think we all are glad to hear that we're working on it. Okay, we will proceed then with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla. Here. Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Here. Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
There are no deletions or additions to the agenda, and at this point, we have no executive sessions. Item 4, appointments. The clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Paul Post to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for a term ending April 1, 2020.
And council members, you know that with our new rules and regulations of the council adopted effective as of the beginning of the year, appointments will be separated from the consent agenda to prevent the mayor from voting for people that he is appointing for your approval. So, though that is the appointment for tonight, what is your pleasure? Councilwoman Delisa. And Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the appointment is made. And Mr. Post is not with us this evening. We will then go to the consent agenda.
A is minutes of the regular meeting of January 3, 2017, and there are no applications.
That is the consent agenda, and your pleasure. Councilwoman Ortiz moves to approve. Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read. Go to the action items. The first is a resolution.
A is a resolution introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber describing the areas to be considered priorities for 2017 planning target areas for future federal and city funding as may be allocated within the 2018 and 2019 city budgets.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As noted in the background in your packet, several months ago, the DNR, Department of Neighborhood Relations, put out a call to NIAs saying that we were giving the opportunity to apply for SORT funds. As this body knows, those funds are targeted to very specific neighborhoods for very specific improvements over a multi-year process. There is a selection committee in place, and that group has recommended 2 particular neighborhoods for SORT funding this year. Those neighborhoods are Tennessee Town and Quinton Heights Steel neighborhood. And so if this resolution is adopted, that will set the SORT funding into place. Ms. Stiles is also, Ms. Hahn is also here for questions if you have those specific.
So tonight, we are approving the selection of those two neighborhoods, and then they begin the process of planning, and that comes back to us,
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
and of how they plan to expend the funds. Okay, are there questions on the issue? Councilwoman Claire.
From what you just said, I see in our handout that the projects are listed, so we know how they're going to spend the money?
I think that's the
You're ahead. I'm ahead of us?
You're on the empowerment.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
What time is it? Okay.
It's early. Any questions? Your pleasure. Councilman Jensen moves approved. Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the motion is approved. Did you comment?
I do.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
just want to say that Tennessee Town has had it before, and they've done a remarkable job of doing some things over there, but Clintonsteel Heights has never had it. And it's just a little area with a great group of people. One of my NIAs is over there, so I'm glad to see that they were allotted this. They've been working with Bill and city staff to work hard to try to get something over there. So that makes me real proud to see that.
Very good. Thank you. Item B, resolution.
B is a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber approving the 2017 Neighborhood Empowerment Grants as recommended by the Neighborhood Empowerment Grant Committee.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As noted, if this action is approved, it will adopt the recommendations of the Neighborhood Empowerment Grant Committee for 6, as Councilwoman Clear alluded to, 6 very specific projects totaling an amount of $137,890. So that's $135,470 in actual projects, and then there's some contingency funds available in case that need arises. Those projects are listed in your packet and specifically in the resolution, but they include improvements to Ripley Park, Billard Park, Sumner Street sidewalk, Central Park improvements, Great Mural Wall for Chesney Park, and Giles Park improvements in Ward Mead neighborhood. So,
Okay. Questions? Councilman Claire.
I have a question and comment. Why do we fund parks since we don't have parks? Because I look at some of these improvements, it's a bike rack, trash receptacles in a park. Why are we paying for parks when Shawnee County's Parks and Rec should be paying for parks? At least a trash receptacle, picnic table, new trees. Why are we doing that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, I think the simple answer is these are the priorities of these groups that applied, and those projects are specifically eligible for these funds. They were vetted by a committee of staff and neighborhood leaders who felt like that was a wise use of the funds for those particular areas.
Yeah. And the funds are to be used for infrastructure, parks, whatever, within the NIAs. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Mayor, if there's really specific questions on the project details, I'll probably have Mrs. Hahn come up and
Okay.
address those. So you're sitting there.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Do you want to speak to that, or just speak in general to what these funds can be used for?
So you are correct, Mr. Mayor. The funds must be used for public improvements that anybody in the community could enjoy, and specifically in the neighborhood. So we have to do those on public property that's open to the neighborhood specifically, but the community as a whole.
Okay, go ahead. Councilman Claire.
Why? Who made that rule up? Because my thought is, if they didn't have to pay for stuff in the park, they could pay for other stuff. I mean, who set that rule that it had to be?
So the empowerment grant funds come out of the 15% of our HUD funds are dedicated to public improvements, and that's allowed by HUD. Not more than 15%, but 15%. So the Empowerment Grant Program was created inside of that public improvement piece of our HUD funding. And so, because it is a public improvement, it must benefit the public.
So the only place, where else could you put it then?
Pardon?
Where else could you put it if not a park?
We have sidewalk improvements that are part of this 2017 year cycle. We have, in the Ward Mead neighborhood, we have a pilot program that is solar lighting, that's pedestrian lighting. So it absolutely could be public improvements that aren't in parks, but I would echo the city manager's comments that the parks are very important to the neighborhoods. And we support the improvement of the neighborhoods and the improvement of the quality of life.
I think it's sad they have to spend their money on the parks instead of sidewalks when we don't manage the parks. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
So probably we need to visit with our NIAs. I mean, if going on that, and if that's the way, and to direct them.
Well, it's either do without or spend your money on that. I mean, and I just think it's sad they have to spend their money on that.
Yeah, right. I know, well, another one would be the Great Mural Project. Now, that's not a park, I don't believe. So that
It
would
is
be,
not.
that would
It's
be
on.
one in from Chesney. Yeah. Councilman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this is she's bringing up a good point. I mean, on the one hand, that's federal money, and it comes to the city for those neighborhoods. So we are the conduit for the neighborhoods to do within the regulations what they want to do, and in that way, the parks are a fit. On the other hand, for years, we had the park department too, so we complemented that money with our own investments in the parks. And so it was all one package at the time. And I certainly wouldn't recommend changing anything for this year, but if Councilwoman Clear and folks from the NIAs would want to address that in terms of a chat with the county, as well as what the guidelines are for future empowerment grants, that's probably worth a discussion. Like I say, I don't think that discussion has occurred since the park department went over. But again, the federal money was to help those neighborhoods regardless. So.
Are there other questions or comments? Councilwoman Elisa.
Thank you, Mayor Wilgas. Ms. Stiles, with the grant process, is it necessary, because I know that the federal government works by a point system. So when those grants were being written, were the things that are outlined as empowerment grants sent out to HUD so that we could get the funds that we receive?
So, our project-specific information is reported back to HUD in our caper, not a CAFR, a caper. So we do report that to them, but it's at the end of our program year. We don't include specific details of projects like this, where a location and what we're going to purchase, in our consolidated action plan, which is kind of that application to HUD for how we're going to use the funds. So it's not this detailed specific, but we do talk about the Empowerment Grant Program and how it empowers the neighborhoods and does help with neighborhood revitalization.
Thank you.
Councilman Ortiz.
It just lists that Ripley Park has intensive care. Do you know what they're talking about? I mean, I would agree, but can you specifically tell me?
Yes, that is East Topeka North, and their health rating in the health map is intensive care. So that's.
Or what are they requesting, Sasha?
Oh, for Ripley Park specific? I believe it's.
It just gave a dollar amount.
Give me a second here.
Yeah.
The detail is not in there. I'll have to provide you with the detail tomorrow.
And the amount is $52,900.
It would be
for Ripley.
equipment, either play equipment, barbecue grills, park benches, things like that.
And again, I'm wondering again if what Ms. Clear is saying, why aren't the Parks and Recs providing some of that?
Which I know the mayor
Yeah.
mentioned a long meeting, but if I could just add on one piece of information for you to know. So I do agree that perhaps in previous years, there hasn't been a lot of cooperation between maybe city and county in the improvement of the parks. In 2016 specifically, we engaged in conversations with John Knight, Terry Birtles, and Bill Rapon about that very thing. And they are partnering with us on these projects. In times when we know that the project will outrun the empowerment funding that we have available, they're filling the gap. We've also incorporated them into the workshop process with the neighborhoods, not only for empowerment, but also for SORT, so that the neighborhoods can understand the plans that the parks have in their long-term plan, so that we don't have neighborhoods proposing things that don't really fit into the big master plans, either the city's comprehensive development plan, the pedestrian plan, or their park plan. So we are making efforts to strengthen those partnerships, and we do have commitment from Shawnee County on funding specific to some of these 2016 empowerment projects.
Okay. Councilwoman Claire?
I'd like to know about Ripley and what they have said they would do there, because they've told me they would do nothing there. So I would like to know.
Yes, ma'am. So to be clear, the commitments that they've made are for Hillside Park, or I'm sorry, Hillcrest Park, and but they're 2016 projects. They're not.
So they're
So I will provide
only
you.
certain, okay.
Happy to provide you with
Certain
that
projects.
information, but I want to get it right, so I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Are there other questions? Councilman Schwartz?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be real quick. I sent out an email about 3 o'clock today, so you probably haven't seen it. But Sasha and Monique and I went up to Wyandotte County to Kansas City. They have a program, Livable Neighborhoods, and they give out grants not only, I know this is CDBG money, and so this is going to go to a certain designated area, but they give out grants, small grants, $500 to 89 neighborhoods. And what it has accomplished is bringing all the neighborhoods of the community together. And it's not based on, the level of income or anything. So I'm going to send out the link to their Livable Neighborhoods and what they're doing. They have neighborhood grant application forms that they have posted. They have a litany of people involved in the neighborhood development. And I know we're so busy in Topeka, and we haven't really had a chance to follow up on that. But I hope after I send the link out that you all look at that, and as we go into budget time, maybe to look at that also. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Your pleasure. Councilwoman Evelisa?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Councilman Jensen seconds. Any discussion? If not, those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. Item C.
C is approval of governing body rules and procedures, Section 8.2B regarding council committee terms.
Okay. Council, in December, we passed the revised governing body rules and procedures with this one exception, and it was referred to the Policy and Finance Committee for their recommendation. So I asked the chair of that committee to give the action of the committee.
Thank you, Mayor. You should have in your packet a recommendation from the committee that a language in 8.2B regarding appointments, and this was one of the proposals that we were looking at the other day, simply be inserted to say that the deputy mayor shall appoint the members to each standing committee referenced in subsection A above, and shall make a reasonable effort to stagger terms for the purpose of establishing familiarity and continuity from year to year. Briefly, the committee discussed the issues that the committee understood were on the table were the idea of staggering terms, as well as an idea of 2-year terms, but with a goal of wanting continuity in the work of committees and carrying forward people that had some experience and knowledge of the issues. We spent more time than we expected, actually, sort of kicking around all those words. We felt, and committee, if I'm summarizing it incorrectly, let me know. But overall, the term stagger alone was, we tried to think about how it might be looked at in the future. Would someone think that meant that we should be staggering terms and always putting new people on committees, or would it be interpreted as continuity? We felt like alone that might be problematic. In looking at the 2-year terms, which was a well-intended good idea, what we realized is that perhaps it was too complicated. And the reasons being that combined with the term stagger, are we talking about staggering 2-year terms? Does that mean opposing 1 year, every other year? How would that go? If we were staggering the 2-year terms as full 2-year terms, what did that mean? Would it be clear to someone in the future reading that? And also we realized that 2-year terms, and some of this was hindsight for me actually, if they weren't on the even years, they would be bridging election cycles, and it would just be a mess. And so with all that conversation, the committee felt that the language of shall make a reasonable effort to stagger terms for the purpose of establishing familiarity and continuity from year to year would give enough guidance to the council members and the deputy mayor to say, bring some people forward, do try and move new people in. We'd had some history where committees had wanted to carry forward, and when people signed up for committees, they said so, and the deputy mayors have been pretty good about responding to that. So with that, I would certainly take questions, but I would propose approval of the amendment as proposed by the Policy and Finance Committee.
All right. It has been moved to approve the recommendation of the committee. Councilman Emerson seconds. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes,
Eight
Clear
having-
and Ortiz voting no.
Okay, excuse me. 8 having voted yes, that section of the governing body rules and regulations, rules and procedures is made effective. Item D is resolution.
D is a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber in accordance with Section 1860-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving a conditional use permit to allow for a parking surface lot in association with the principal use at 2035 Southwest Western Avenue on property zoned M1 two-family dwelling district and located along the east side of Southwest Fillmore between Southwest Hampton and Southwest 20th Streets within the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Feiner will give an overview of this. The council has seen this case previously. The body remanded it to the Planning Commission last November. The Planning Commission heard it in December, and now they've made a recommendation back to this body for your consideration.
Thank you, Interim City Manager. Good evening, Your Honor, council members. As was mentioned, you have heard this before. You had sent this back to the Planning Commission for more discussion, really. We didn't have a full body at that time when they did hear it. We did this time in December. A couple things have changed since then. I'll just kind of refresh your memory. So if you remember, this conditional use permit really had 2 parts to it. It had a correctional placement facility for a potential tenant known as City of Faith. there was an LLC that they had formed to do that. They withdrew their interest in the building and in the property. They actually will probably be coming back at some point for another alternative site over that some of you know about on Seward in Oakland. So that'll be another month or two down the line. But they have withdrawn their interest, just to be clear, in this property altogether. So what the Planning Commission did is that we went ahead and sent out notices again to people who we had done the first time and those who had commented and come and spoken. And so they really only considered the second part of this CUP, which is a parking lot. The parking lot, as you can see on the screen, is across the alley from the building along Fillmore Street. That's the red outlined area. We did find that the staff recommended approval of the parking lot. It's consistent with our Chesney Park neighborhood plan. It was approved with the condition of a berm and landscape berm and setback along Fillmore to be more in keeping with the neighborhood. So the recommendation that comes back to you is to not consider the correctional placement facility for City of Faith, just the parking lot, and that is recommended for approval. So we'll stand for any questions.
Are there questions? Councilman Cohen.
Thanks. Why is a parking lot needed if nobody's going to use that building?
Councilmember Cohen, there's about 16,000 square feet in the building that has been vacant for 10 years. It has very little, as you can see on that aerial, parking at all. So to convert that to office for a potential tenant of any sort, they really do need a parking lot. And so to help market and reuse that building. So if it's not City of Faith, they need somebody else to fill that space, and so they need a parking lot.
Okay. Other questions? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. So what I expect is the south side of that comes right up to a residence or another structure of sorts. Is it really going to come that close in real life, or is this just the outline of the property?
Councilmember Jensen, this is the outline of the property that would be approved for parking. There is no site plan for the southern half of this area yet, so they would have to come back. It just identifies future parking, and so we would have to have a buffer there between that and the structure.
So we're not building a berm up to somebody's front door yet?
No, that's right. That is, the berm would just be for the northern half where the parking lot for Phase 1 would be. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Your pleasure.
So moved.
Councilwoman Ortiz moves to approve. Councilwoman Del Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the resolution on the agreement is approved. We go to item E, an ordinance.
E is an ordinance introduced by Councilmember Brendan Jensen concerning miniature pigs, amending City of Topeka Code Section 635030 and repealing original section and creating new section 645010.
Okay, Councilman Jensen, would you introduce, please?
Good evening, everyone. So we discussed this a little bit last week. This is an exception to the anti-swine ordinance that would permit people to keep miniature pigs strictly as pets within the city limits. There's been quite a lot of discussion going on about this and an even broader discussion about pets in general in the city. And so what we would like to do is recommend that this be approved because it addresses a very specific issue, and then take all of the pet ordinances we have, including this one, and send them off to a committee for a global review. A good example is the concern about animal welfare. Well, that's a broader concern than just miniature pigs. In general, that should cover all animals, dogs, cats, goats, what have you. And so there's a global view that needs to be reviewed within the community, not necessarily just this. And so passing this would allow us to address a specific issue and then take the time we need to go through everything and make a comprehensive change if necessary so that everything fits within the community. Because there is a number of things that are very old that are just sort of a hodgepodge of things put together. And that would give us a chance to bring Hamlet home and at the same time really clean up our definitions and other things that need to be worked over. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
Why don't you move? You want to
Okay.
move approval, and then we'll continue with discussion.
Sure. So with that, I would move to approve,
Okay.
and at the same time, send everything to committee. I believe it would be health and safety.
Be public health.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, public health and safety, yes.
So, okay. Well, actually, so you're moving to refer this ordinance?
No, well, I'm moving to approve the ordinance and refer all the ordinances to committee.
I think we just do
Okay, all right.
Let's do
So
one.
let's move to approve this.
Yes.
And then I'll make a subsequent motion to send everything to committee.
Okay, you're moving to approve the ordinance as presented. And Councilman DeLisle seconds. All right, now, discussion. Councilman Clear.
So would that include, on our little comparison chart, I see under registration or permit require that Topeka does not have anything. I would hope they would get a permit.
So that's a global issue with all pets that I would agree. Right now, we only require dogs to be registered with the city, is my understanding. And you have to either get online and get a little tag. We're supposed to have cats registered too. So the biggest issue with registration is the number of people that don't do that. And so, there's a broader question is it even working in the city? What could be done to make it more effective? I know recently they've added a website where you can go and fill it out, but I would wager say the vast majority of pet owners in this community don't register their pets with the city. So
I would not let that be a reason that we cannot say, yes, they need to be registered. Then it's up to them whether they register them or not.
And that's
But I
fine.
think we ought to
Yeah.
require.
And I'm not opposed, I'm not opposed to registering all pets in the city, but my argument is that that's not specific to pigs, it would be all pets.
Well, we have dogs, cats. Can we just stick pigs in there, and then we can deal with the other ones later?
If you'd like to amend it, I'm absolutely happy to do so.
So the ordinance does not have that in there now? I was just looking at the...
It doesn't, and we didn't put it in there just because, and I don't know the exact numbers of the registration that's out there. I know there are tons of people in my neighborhood, when I've asked about it, have said no, they've not done that. I would say the vast majority of people I've talked to have not registered their pet with the city. Now, that could be unique to the folks that I've talked to, but that's my experience.
I would...
So.
You're speaking about your neighborhood. Maybe other neighborhoods have more people.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to move that be, or
Okay. And
amended.
in the ordinance we have, it says following requirements are met, and we have A through E. So we could include there, the city attorney could help. F would be a requirement for registration.
Would you envision it being the annual registration, same as dogs? Okay. Every year. I have to register my dog every
That's
year.
every year.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. We're looking through the code right now to verify the registration, whether dogs have to be registered, cats and fowl on a yearly basis or not, or how often that time frame is. We just want to get that verified so it's consistent.
All right.
And I think, this obviously underlies some of the concerns with this particular issue. It really does need to be more globally addressed, and the more we make these amendments, the more they're going to be in conflict potentially with other portions of the code.
Yes. City attorney.
Correct. Mayor, there's a provision in the dog ordinance and the cat ordinance that talks about tags, but that doesn't flow over into some of the other applications, some of the other animals. So I guess I could model the tag requirement, the permit requirement from the dog and the cat ordinance, and just fold that into the miniature pig piece. And then when we take a more global look at it, my preference would be just to have a section that deals with permits and licensing requirements, and that those apply to all of them, so they're not compartmentalized in dogs, and then another same thing in cats, and that makes a lot more sense to me, but.
And that was our logic behind passing this one part, because the stipulations we have here are specific only to pigs. And then as part of the global look, we would look at registration and some of those other things.
Okay. Do you feel that we have it in the appropriate language that we could insert tonight? Or do we
Mayor,
want to-
I could model it after 6.20.150. That's the tag piece for the dogs, and just do something similar to that, but replace dog with miniature pig.
Does that meet your-
Yeah, I just don't want to not do it, take 6 months, then we add it, and then people have to, I'd just soon get it in there.
Yeah, I agree
Okay.
completely.
What's the tag?
We have a motion to pass this ordinance. I'm sorry. So if we're going to this amendment, then I think we should vote on the amendment. So, Sandra, Councilwoman Clear moves that we include the language so that we have the registration for miniature pigs. And Councilman DeLisa, you second that?
I was going to ask a question.
All right, you give Ortiz, Councilman Ortiz seconds it. And this is, and for amendments, this is okay with you?
Absolutely.
You'll check with the
Yes.
person who made the motion, correct? Okay, yes, question?
Thank you. This question is for legal. Would it be easier so that we don't have to have specific code in the new language just to say to refer to subsection whatever in the general code?
No, not the way. Councilmember De La Isla, when we get the code revised, that's what I would love to do.
But we're not there.
Okay, yep.
All right, we're voting to approve the amendment to include the required registration of miniature pigs. Yes, Mr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa, I hate to put you on the spot. Would you mind reading the language, or is it really lengthy?
The tag requirement in the dog provision reads as follows, Councilmember Emerson. This is kind of what I was thinking might work. It says, upon full compliance with the terms of this article, the city treasurer or authorized agent, will obviously fix that verbiage, shall issue a written permit to the applicant together with a permit tag stamped with an identifying number, and so designed that it may be securely fastened to a collar or harness. The tag issued pursuant to this section shall be securely attached to the collar or harness of it would be miniature pig instead of dog, for which such permit and tag is issued, and shall be worn at all times the miniature pig is off the premises of the owner. If a tag issued for a miniature pig is lost, a new tag may be obtained from the city treasurer upon replacement or payment of a replacement fee. No person shall attach a tag to any miniature pig other than the one for which the tag was issued.
Thank you. Do you envision changing treasurer to city clerk?
Yeah, I
Thank
probably
you.
would do that. Actually, Councilmember Emerson, I think in some of the more updated provisions of that, it refers to the police department, because I believe that's where they go to get the tag. But I could put
We can create a new job for this.
for kicks.
Councilman Hiller?
In the discussion of this issue last week, the lady who testified pointed out that pigs don't have necks enough to have a collar, and that requiring collars and tags wouldn't work for pigs. She did discuss that some cities apparently require microchipping, which, again, we may want to work in when we redo the whole thing. I don't know if that same language is there for cats. I know it's either not the same or we overlook it for cats. So I can't support that change right now without a little further investigation and work on the wording, especially if collars and tags don't work for pigs. I have some further concerns as well, but I know we're on the amendment right
It's on the
now.
amendment,
so-
right. Councilwoman Claire?
From what I've read, since last week, most pigs wear the harnesses, so you put the tag on the harness like she had said, and that's just when they're outside. So unless you take your pig for a walk, he doesn't have to wear it anyway.
Okay. Other discussion, Councilman Jensen?
That's correct. In the code, they don't have to wear that while they're on their owner's property. It's only when they're out for a walk, which they would have to have the harness on and then get a leash, essentially.
Okay, we have a motion. I'm sorry.
That would still require changing the language.
I'm sorry? No, I believe it's in there now that it only has to be worn while they're off their owner's property.
That's correct. I was going to point out, too, I looked up the cat provision, and it's found in 6.30.120, and it talks about fastening a tag to a collar for a cat.
Okay.
So could we, instead of saying collar on the pig part, could we just simply say harness?
Harness.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman Ortiz?
Or if they could provide it upon demand, like if the officer comes out. I know there's some dogs that they can't. My dog won't keep it on, but they make me show it every time they come out. So I think that's important. Also, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is there a provision that they have to show where they've been, had their shots and stuff? Because I would want to make sure that they, in order to get their license, that they have to be, just like our dogs, they have to have
I would
rabies.
agree.
And so I would like to make sure that they would have to be vaccinated before they could get their tag.
Yeah, the ordinance includes that the pig has been vaccinated.
Yeah, so they
for
just have to
rabies,
provide proof of
and
that, the
they
tag.
have to, and be spayed and neutered.
But-
Okay, we have amendment to include registration of miniature pigs. Any other discussion? All those in favor of that amendment, vote yes. Opposed, vote no. This is a home rule ordinance, and therefore the mayor does not vote. I guess
Okay, we have 7 yes, Ms. Hiller and Mr. Harmon voting no, and the mayor did not vote.
7 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. We have before us then the ordinance as proposed with the amendment. Is there further discussion of that? Councilman Ortiz?
What I was trying to say, Mr. Mayor, if that wasn't going to, if they didn't have to show that to get their tag, then I'm not going to support it. And that's why I was asking her, does that include that?
Okay.
Councilmember Ortiz, there is a provision in both the dog and cat ordinance that talks about vaccination certificates being a prerequisite to issuance, so we could, incorporate that language.
But we were past the amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying, does that
It'd be-
include that?
Well, I think
We just agreed to adopt the exact language from the dog ordinance with the exception, so I don't know why that wouldn't be part of it if it's part of the dog ordinance.
It's in a different section. I did not read it, but
okay.
Would you like to propose that? I'm happy to accept it.
There's a friendly amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you'd like to, let's do it.
6.30.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to propose that.
Get the dog one, it could be.
Okay.
I think that would keep us in line if the pigs are over 150 pounds or the required weight. I think it would do a lot of things.
Sure. Sure.
That they're required to do.
Okay, this is a friendly amendment that we do not have a separate vote for it. Is there a general, anyone
Yeah, that's
disagree
great,
with
yeah.
that?
Very happy.
All right, we've made a friendly amendment to include that more specific language pertaining to registration. The clerk, do you have that
We do.
appropriately? Okay. So we have the motion, the ordinance before us with the amendment and the friendly amendment. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 things, and I think they're both very significant. One is that with Councilman Harmon's questions last time in the discussion, I thought that by this week, before we voted, even if we chose to send the bigger ordinance to the committee, that there would be a review and a report for us in terms of where pigs did fit into the other sections, such as animal cruelty, We've already talked about the licensing and so on, and we did not get that. And there was a lot of discomfort in the discussion last time of being certain, at least if we voted to add pigs, what clearly all otherwise covered them. At least that's how I heard it, and that's important to me. I don't feel like I've got that assessment yet, and I would like to have it before I vote on this. I'm comfortable with adding pigs, actually, in general, but I want to understand what we've got, because it could be 6 to 12 months, as Councilman Jensen mentions. The other thing is that we did ask, I think it was afterward, about checking with Helping Hands. It turns out that no one had checked prior to this proposal with our own Humane Society about what their opinion was and whether they could accept pigs if either one ran away or was being abused. And I made that call today, and it turns out that they can't take pigs at our shelter. And so if we were going to approve pigs, we need to have an idea of where someone would take them if something bad happens to them or one would run away. She's happy to help look into that, but I think that's a major gap in our system. And further, and that's because they're considered livestock, so they just can't take them at that shelter. Apparently, in some other cities, there are specialized people that can take in, either in the city or out, I'm not even sure, hoofed animals. Anyway, we don't know that yet. She commented also that pigs are known for carrying diseases. The pseudo-rabies was the one she knew about, and I said that we had that covered. She wasn't sure if there were others, and in calling her today, she said she'd be happy to research it, thought we really should check with the state. The State Veterinarian and Board of Agriculture to make sure that we were requiring whatever vaccinations were needed. She also pointed out that, and she was just kind of giving me some background of what she knew, that Fort Riley's having a problem right now where people have been releasing pigs and they go feral pretty fast. So you do need to have a plan in place. It's not that hopefully that wouldn't happen, but we need to have something in mind. With those two things, for me, I think it should be, hopefully there's a solution, but I think we should postpone this until February the 7th to give staff time or Mr. Jensen time to look into these and make sure we have answers to these questions.
Okay, we have a motion and amendment, and we do have a public comment.
Could I respond to those 2 points real quick?
All right, yes.
Those are important issues, you're absolutely right. But those are not necessarily just issues with pigs. These are broader animal ordinance issues. Currently, we do not have any provisions preventing goats. Same issue. Is Helping Hands set up to take goats? Most likely not if they can't take pigs because they're livestock. So that doesn't necessarily apply to permitting pigs. And what we're trying to do tonight is essentially legalize the ones that are here. There's already pigs in the city, and I'd be interested to have the police come up and tell us what they do when they run into a pig issue now. I expect they already have a procedure in place to handle that simply because there are already pigs in the city. So the broader issue that needs to be looked at is what happens when we have exotic animals or livestock in the city. It's not necessarily just pigs in general. But it does need to be handled, and that's the point of the second part with referring it all to a committee to try and come up with a comprehensive plan for the city, because outside of if the police have a procedure, I'm not sure we do.
Okay, all right. We have a person to speak, Chance Lammer. Okay. Therefore, we have before us an ordinance that has been amended and a friendly amendment. Is there other discussion? Councilman Hiller?
I would like to do a substitute motion to defer to February the 7th.
I think
I can.
Yeah, it'd be just to defer. It wouldn't be a
Correct.
substitute motion. You would move to defer this.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to defer this to February
7th, I think, is
7th?
the first meeting.
All right. February 7th. Moved and seconded to defer this issue until February 7 meeting. Is there any discussion? Councilman Jensen.
For the record, I don't know that we could solve these problems in that amount of time.
It would
Again,
satisfy
it's-
me to just have that information about where the pigs fit and to know if there was a destination for delivery if something went wrong.
And if,
I mean, okay, Mr. Interim City Manager, give us some thoughts, some clarity here to this issue.
From a staff perspective, we, I think, share some of these concerns that there are some concerns with not having had enough time to do our due diligence on this. Certainly the 7th does, that's a fairly rapid turnaround for some of what we will need to get into. It won't allow us to get into a global view, but it will allow the legal staff to address some of these more specific issues, I think, if that's what the body is comfortable with.
Okay, all right. Councilman Clare?
Can we ask the police department what they would do? Or is there
Well, we have a
someone
motion
here?
we have a motion right now to defer. So we really should
have
be
to vote on that
discussing.
first?
We need to vote on determining if we're going to defer. Any other discussion on deferring this until February the 7th? If not, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no, and again, the mayor doesn't vote.
We have 6 yes, Clear, De La Isla, and Jensen voting no.
6 having voted yes, the motion is passed to defer this issue until the February the 7th meeting. Okay? Moving on, we now go to item F, ordinance on annexation.
F is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber annexing land to the city of Topeka, Kansas in accordance with KSA 12520, located at the northwest corner of Southeast 6th Street and Southeast Croco Road within unincorporated Shawnee County, Kansas, and adjacent to the city of Topeka corporate limits, and said land being annexed for all city purposes.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. We have had discussion on this item in multiple forums, lengthy planning commission meeting about a month ago, and then a really positive and impactful discussion last time where both the proponents and opponents stated well-rationed and well-reasoned positions and got good feedback from this body. It's now before you tonight for action. As you note in your agenda, there will actually be 3 separate items for your consideration this evening. The first is annexation, the second is an amendment to the comp plan, and then the third will be a potential rezoning. I've probably stolen some of his thunder, but Mr. Feinder's going to come forward and make a brief presentation as well.
Okay, Mr. Finder.
Good evening once again. Thank you. Yes, I thought we'd just touch briefly on and refresh your memory from last week, what the proposal is here as we go through these 3 steps. The first step before you here is an annexation ordinance. This is really necessary actually to act on the zoning, which is the 3rd step. So if this is not approved, then we would not hear the zoning. The annexation is necessary to receive city utilities, water and sewer. They are contiguous at the northwest corner of Croco and Southeast 6th. And contiguous. Our analysis, real quickly, all 5 city services are in place. The roads arterials are built to urban standards. What is not built to urban standard, they will develop alongside their site. Affordability for the city, the revenue covering the cost to serve and the life cycle cost to replace infrastructure in the area. And then also, does this make us more compact? Yes. So all those 3 things we looked at. It's in the urban growth area, which has the expectation to be in the city one day. So given that, this is consistent with our land use and growth management plan, and Planning Commission had recommended approval for that.
Are there questions for Mr. Finder or discussion? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know legally where this needs to go, Lisa, but I read in there that we would either make an agreement or what did it say? Something about make an agreement or make a contract? with regards to the street maintenance. Is that in this one? Is that in,
That,
is that in the, is that,
I think interim city manager will speak to that.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, that was actually a separate memo sent to this body by the Director of Public Works, Mr. Peak, which he indicated that part of what we want to do moving forward is we have a lot of what you might call gentlemen's agreements with the county or townships in terms of how we maintain roads. Moving forward, we'd like to formalize those more appropriately.
and that's what I want to do. I want to formalize it, and I want it to be a part of this, if we can formalize it, because I've had so many problems on Rice Road, and I know they say, well, no, that's not what was said. I've got emails to prove that it's been back and forth, that I would like to formalize. I don't want it verbal, I want to formalize that we have some type of agreement that we can go back to whoever's responsible for that. I just don't know where it fits in.
But I think on, as far as Rice Road, I believe from the memo, that is with the county and the township. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. I don't know that annexation and road maintenance necessarily coincide, but it may be an appropriate place. I'd maybe see if Mr. Finder has any thoughts about that.
Well, my thought would be in terms of Croco Road, yes. I think the maintenance has been spelled out. That's what we ask. We ask departments, can you maintain this? Is this within your budget? We hear back from the county in this case that they have requested the city to maintain, as is customary, half of the portion of Croco Road in this, that would be contiguous in this annexation. So I think that is, as was pointed out by Mr. Peak in his memo, that is sort of the customary, but it is going to be formalized as we work together when the road gets built. It's not built yet. So when the road gets built, work out exactly between the county and City Public Works who does what. With that 1,000 feet, it's about 1,000 feet of road that it would be contiguous to the city now.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if I'm satisfied, but I just know it's very important to me because I've had such an issue with Rice Roads. And Mayor, I don't think I forwarded the emails that I went back and dug up where people said it's this or that. And that's why it's just important because of the wear and tear. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
good.
Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions on the annexation? Councilman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. I think these apply to all of them, so you help me if I'm off. We've had a number of questions that came from the public and concerns, and I wanted to just clarify a couple of them here, just so it was clear that we'd checked it out and also make sure we've got the answers straight. Speaking of the roads, there had been concern about truck traffic in particular on heading north on Croco, which would in pretty short order become a two-lane or remain a two-lane as it's been before, and also whether there would be truck traffic on Rice, which is not improved to the level that Croco and Deer Creek Traffic Way are. Could you respond to that in terms of what you think the likelihood is of that and what we would do about it if it turns out there is truck traffic?
Sure. Councilwoman Hiller, so there was a traffic study that was approved by the city traffic engineer that was performed by the developer's consultant. In that study, the expectations, the assumptions were that there would not be a cause for any truck traffic to go north of the site for Reesers, nor would there be an expectation for it to increase on Rice. That doesn't mean somebody wouldn't go down there. If in fact it becomes an issue where you're having, because those roads are not really built for the larger truck traffic, truck bodies as we know, so there really is no reason for them to do that. If it became an issue, the city can request restrictions limiting truck traffic if it becomes a maintenance or a safety issue. Those are both in township, those are township maintained as well.
Thank you so much on that one. If I could, Mayor, I've got two others. we've had a lot of contact from folks who said, couldn't you have chosen an alternate site? My understanding is that there was an explanation at the Planning Commission level in fair detail about what other sites were looked at and why they were rejected and why this one. I think there's always push-pull when it comes up, and it's putting industrial where there had been residential before, but could you briefly just itemize those?
Councilwoman Hiller, I will try. I know there are others that may have more knowledge of that may come after me. Let me give it a shot. The sites that were vetted through this process, first looking close by, the existing research facilities to the north there. I think it was asked whether Forest Park, if for those of you who know Forest Park is, it wasn't large enough, and it was also in a floodplain, so there's a lot of constraints there to build there, and it wasn't for sale. So there was a question about could you take the old the shopping center at Deer Creek and 6th. That's a 5-6 acre site. This is a 25-acre site, and that site was also not for sale. There was some exploration down at Croco, Rice Road, down near I-70 and 21st. If I'm getting those, but a lot of that does not have sewer. In fact, I don't think any of it has sewer, and to put it in with the rock there was just prohibitive. And it quite honestly doesn't have the infrastructure in there. So off the top of my head, those were sort of some of the other sites that were looked at, and maybe some others can come up after me and round that out, but that's what I remember.
Thank you. The third question was, there'd been concern, it was addressed a little bit last week about runoff. Could you talk about whether with this development, any runoff that apparently has been an experience on the east side of Croco would be better or worse? And also, I got a couple of letters where people were concerned about how the utilities were working. I guess they're city water and sewer, and they were wanting it to be better, or maybe have storm sewers on their side of the street as well. Could you briefly address those issues?
Sure. The stormwater is all going to flow and be retained on the research site and flow to the northwest into a detention pond as shown on the site plan. We have then allow it to release into a creek to the northwest of the site. So everything is being captured on site and then directed slowly to be released off site to the northwest to the creek, that's the natural flow. So going east, this would not impact anybody to the east of the site. In terms of some of there's ditches for roadside ditches there for drainage purposes. Those would be covered up by the new street improvements, but anything that flows, drains off the street would go into the new storm inlets and drain daylight to the north in the drainage swales that are there to the north along the street. There's also experts here to help answer those questions if I got anything wrong, but that generally none of this would affect anything to the east.
And maybe it's for another time, but there were concerns about water pressure and whether the plant would affect the water pressure.
Well, there will need to be an upgrade in the water system for sure. Research is a high water user here, so I think those are that's still to remain as an unknown as to the effect. So I think it goes beyond what we've looked at, other than the system would be upgraded. So improvements in the area should lead to better service.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Clare.
Do you know where the entrance and exit for the trucks, where it will be? Is it on 6th or is it on?
Yes, so the main entry for trucks would be off 6th. In fact, we've required Reese's to put in a turn lane for those trucks on 6th. And most of the traffic would be coming off of 6th. There is a access point on Croco as well, on the north end of the site, for two-way circulation. But the majority, lion's share of the trucks will be coming off of 6th.
And why don't you think they'll go down Croco? Where do you think they'll go?
So they'll be going back and forth between the plans on 10th and Deer Creek. So they'll be going down Croco to the west.
You mean 6th? You mean 6th?
Did I say correct? I'm sorry, down 6th. Yes, they'll be going back and forth on 6th, east and west. Also the highway I-70 and K4 with an access right there at 6th. And 6th for Highway 4.
But it's not right there.
Croco for I-70. The plant being on 6th.
Right.
That is the most direct route. That is why they chose this site. It's exactly why they chose this site for transportation, the network on 6th and Croco to the south.
Well, I hope they have a turning lane. I was coming down 6th the other day, and one of the semis did a U-turn in the middle of the road, went up on a curb, and went in someone's yard and went right into Reese's. So I hope they put a turning lane.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Finder? Okay, thank you. We have public comment that we will proceed with at this time. And as you know, from some of you were here last week, we do have 20 people to speak on the next two issues. So that's about an hour and 20 minutes that we will be having public comment. I ask again for you to keep the comments to the 4 minutes. You have the lights there to inform you when 1 minute remains, and then when the red is for you to finish. We'll always say the next two so the person can get ready. We ask you to move to the outside. The first speaker is Michael Harding, to be followed by David Welsh.
Yes, Council and Mayor, thank you for this time. I'm the General Manager for the current salad plant and also the distribution center. We appreciate the time to be able to allow us to give some of our dialogue and opinion. I know there was quite a bit last week. There's been dialogue during the planning session, but we felt like that we really still wanted to give some more information about this. We will reiterate again, as you've heard many times, Reese's is very committed to the community, and especially in this particular area. I think what leads a little bit towards some of the questions that you'd had, there's always the dynamics of how you pick a selection economically. But for us, we have a lot of our workers that live in that area. We have a lot of workers that walk to our plants. We have workers that ride their bikes to our plants. We have a lot of workers that also trade, they have their dual earnings, so they trade cars with each other. One will drop one off because they don't have a babysitter to go drop to do this. So there's a lot of that is an advantage to us. So we really have that. We have that network of community, kind of the appropriations for helping them get through their day. But from that point, we know that Reese's has always been and very much an employee-oriented thing, so group. So that came into play with this. We also know that by being able to stay close with this process, we're going to be also, as you're aware, adding 180 jobs through this. And so not only are we hoping that we maintain and sustain the employee base that we have currently with these proximity, but we also want to still entice more from this area in that where we're supporting to include more opportunities for those. And those are opportunities that have them available to some elevation in their jobs throughout this to improve and increase their career. So I know that that's not necessarily the first and foremost to your answer, but it's a special piece to us, because if you were around our facilities, you would see a lot of local groups coming and going to our plants. We understand that there's, and we have heard and understand these concerns that the public has talked about. we had those processes of discussing the traffic. And when you talk about the truck traffic, our trucks really have no reason or need to go north out of there, because the true line of process is to take trucks to and from our DC, our distribution center. That is the vast majority of the truck traffic, plus whatever leaves our facility and or incoming raw materials are coming off the highways, either 4 or 70 or those traffic lanes, and they'll be much more acclimated to coming in through that main 6th entrance. So our truck traffic is going to be very, very much devoted to and or directed towards that 6th Street allocation. We, of course, will have employees coming and going. There was a misconcept that there's a big rush at our shift change. The salad plant does not work off of a sheer shift change. We have a staggered process. We have people that start early in the morning for the cooking, and then the processing, and then the filling, and the packaging, and those are all coming and going at variable times. So it's not the sheer movement of a lot of cars at any given time. I think that those predominantly are the things we wanted to make sure that we had got across. My role in this process is that as we do the project, I am to be supportive of our project people, but also be in conjunction, engaging with our partners, the people that live in that area. We want to have meetings with them. We want to let them know that we're caring with that. My role is to make sure that from the research side, I work with our project manager, and we're invested in making sure that this is a good partnership as we go through this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
All right.
David Welsh, to be followed by Craig Harris.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm David Welsh. I'm the architect for the new project on Croco and 6th Avenue. I'm going to address the issues again that I addressed last week. One is that we are building this plant based on a very successful plant in Hillsboro, Oregon, where we have mitigated most of the concerns that the citizens have voiced. The noise issue, we have tested the plant in Hillsboro. We stay below 60 decibels. We have done some preliminary tests out on Croco and 6th Avenue. The present decibel level runs from somewhere around 58 decibels to as high as 80 decibels, depending on the number of cars and traffic that's running up and down that street. We've done this a couple times, or different times during the day. So we're not really going to add noise as such to the community out there. Odor, again, we're using the newest and best technology that we are aware of in taking care of that odor problem. We had people out with devices to smell, and we have no offensive odors. Lighting. Again, we're very conscious of the lighting issue. We heard what the community said last week. We're using what they call dark sky compliant lighting. What that does is provide downlighting with no uplighting to prevent light pollution. Fuse into the plant, we met with the landscape architect, and we are developing some sculptured berms as opposed to just big berms, and landscaping that will complement the neighborhood. We want this to be a park-like looking event for people on Croco and on 6th. So we're working in that direction. We have been told to do that, which is how many companies tell their architects to do something of that level? It's very rare. Traffic, I think everybody's hit traffic. In a meeting last Thursday, we discussed how this operation works, and it is 6th Avenue that is taking the brunt of the traffic. It goes from the plant to the distribution center, from the distribution back to the plant. And both, the shortest distance between those two is a straight line. And so we do not anticipate a lot of traffic going up Croco to use that access to was the north. We also have to provide fire access around the entire plant. So part of the reason we have those other accesses on Croco is for that issue. So I think the flooding issue, Craig, who is going to follow me, will address that. He's a civil engineer. I'd like to
You have additional minute if you want to conclude your comments.
No, I think that's fine. I want to compliment the staff on working and having the vision to see what we can do for the city of Topeka, what research can do for the city of Topeka. I think it's a great project, and I think long-term, it's going to benefit the city tremendously. I'm proud to be part of this deal.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Councilman Combs. Well, you don't want to get into question and answer, typically. Do you have a question do you need some information that he could provide? Okay.
I looked at the site at your other place, and there's 3 buildings, and it looked like an industrial site. How many buildings is this? Is this just like one big?
Oh, no, there's the big building. There's a site plan. There's the big building with an office in front. And we're using the office that faces Croco to provide scale to the big building. It will bring down the size of that building.
But it's all connected?
Yeah, it's all connected.
Okay.
And then on the back side of the building, on the west side of the building, is a production waste treatment facility, which is a separate building. And that's where the odor that one smells from the Deer Creek plant, that's where that odor has come from. Since that one was done about 8-10 years ago, I think, the technology has improved. We understand better what we have to do. Basically, it's aeration of the wastewater, production wastewater. There's no sanitary fluids that go into that particular facility. And then there's a tank that's behind it. That's that circle thing. That tank is the aeration tank. It's the equalization tank. What it does is let the bacteria that is used to eat product that's in the water before it goes into the sanitary system to neutralize it. But that's what it's for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Craig Harris, to be followed by Mark Armstrong.
Good evening. Craig Harris. I'm the site civil engineer for the project, and I met with you guys, or was here last week, wanted to come back and offer additionally on the stormwater. We are capturing all of our on-site water, everything within our property boundary, going to a water quality detention facility in the northwest corner, and then it would be released towards the creek and not towards Croco. Croco will be extended per the requirements with curb and gutter and inlets that then will discharge into the roadside ditch, so it would continue down as it currently is. The other thing that came up earlier was water pressures. We have tested the water pressure at the existing convenience store that's there now that's not being used, but we have 80 psi normal and 60 psi static, so when it's running it doesn't get below 60, so that's very good pressures. If there is issues on residents on that road, it could be because of either their water meter size, their pipes, or something else. So there is good water pressure at this site, so we have looked at that. That's an important part of our facility, so that we did look into that. So if you have any other questions for Storm.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mark Armstrong, to be followed by Mark Resack.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Mark Armstrong. I live at 344 Southeast Croco Road, right across the street from the proposed plant. I don't know how familiar you all are with that area. I know you've had this map. I've handed this map out to you earlier just so you have an idea what I'm going to talk about. But I don't know if you've driven through there very much or familiar with it, or if you've driven there a lot and you know exactly what it's like. But I just wanted to give you a little tour of the area, starting in the left-hand corner, right where the word city is. Below that, which is right behind Casey's, there's a row of apartment complexes, and that continues out to the east a little bit there, then to the south of all the way out to just past where the prison is on the other side of the street of Rice Road. There's probably another couple hundred houses. If you go north on Rice Road, either side of the street, you can see there's probably another 40 houses in that nature, and some a little bit off to the west of that. Turn east on 2nd Street. There's not much housing down there, but the people that I know that live down there are wonderful people, and they're really concerned about some of the things also we talked about tonight. If you turn back up south then on Croco, or if you've driven up on Baldwin, there's quite a few houses in there. Get to the corner then of 6th and Croco and turn back to the west. You've got a mobile home court with about estimated 200 mobile homes there. And I guess I'm still kind of concerned about some of the things that we've talked about. And if you flip to the back page, there's the bottom chart. I didn't do the top chart, but it's all on one page. Bottom chart deals with the wind directions. And somebody made a comment about most of the time the wind comes from the south. And truly on the south has 19% of the wind flow, but you can see it comes from different directions. And I put a few other statistics below that. Coming from the northwest, 6.3 days out of the month, and from the west and south, 4.9 days. So this doesn't blow north. And the reason I put that on there is because if it blows north, whether it's smell or sound or, God forbid, some type of industrial accident, that will go, not where there's too many houses, but generally speaking, if the wind is blowing in any other direction, it's going to hit some people pretty quickly. And I guess that's one of my great concerns. By the way, just a comment, I kind of made a clerical error, but I was the one who was kind of in charge of putting out a petition, a protest petition, to put that in play, and because of an error on my part, a clerical error, we fell 0.3 of a percentage point short. Instead of 20%, we had 19.7%. My disappointment. But there's a lot of people that are quite concerned about this and quite upset that it's moving into our area, which we still consider a residential area. We consider it primary to live for families, lots of kids around there, and that's where the big concern for traffic comes, is the children. Quite honestly, we've already talked to several parents that they don't know if they can let their kids play on the street. You know how kids are. They'll go up on the widest street there and they'll goof around. So we have some real concerns about that. Whether we put up street signs that say, hey, slow down, kids there, flashing lights, whatever we have to do, even if we don't stop this, I think that's one of the things that you need to consider is the effect on that area. And I know you've probably thought of those things, but I just wanted to reiterate all those. And I do want to thank you for all the work and for allowing us to speak our piece. It's been reassuring to us to at least hear that you're listening to us. So thank you very much, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mark Rezak, to be followed by Tom Ingram.
Your Honor, council members, good evening. My name is Mark Rezak with Kansas Commercial Real Estate. I'm here to address any questions or concerns you might have regarding the other potential sites that we initially targeted in this facility. There were 7 potential sites for this facility, and it became apparent that one by one we had to check those off the list. 2 of those properties were in the floodplain. As you know, property in the floodplain, you're unable to build at that location. Third location is 2-lane road. 2-lane road to handle this truck traffic is not feasible. The services were not there, water or sewer. Fourth location, 2-lane road. Once again, not feasible for truck traffic. Sewer is not available at that location. There's a lot of rock at this location, which is very expensive to remove from the site for construction. Another location, we were unable to put a sufficient amount of land together to construct this facility. Last location was an apartment complex. It was part of the real estate package, which would require us to relocate 200-plus residential tenants. That was unfeasible to relocate 200-plus tenants from their homes. The subject property, northwest corner of 6th and Croco. It's close to the research community. The subject property consisted of 4 owners. First owner was on approximately 18 acres and a house. The second was a convenience store and a vacant convenience store and a vacant car wash that had become dilapidated. The third was an acre and a half of trees and shrubs. The fourth site was 3 acres of soybean field. The subject property is within a half mile of the K4 highway, access to K4 highway, Kansas Turnpike, and I-70. 6th Street is a 5-lane road. It has all the services along 6th Street. Croco Road, short distance north of Croco Road, it does have 5 lanes as well. In your wisdom, the Planning Department, City Council had extended the city services to this area. It only makes sense for the development at this location. We have always asked ourselves, what can we do for Southeast Topeka? We have that opportunity here. Any questions?
Are there questions for Mr. Vizak? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Tom Ingram, to be followed by Heather Farias.
Thank you. I'm Tom Ingram with Cook, Flatt, and Strobel Engineers. I prepared the traffic study for the project. We tried to look at accessibility and safety as our primary concerns for the project. I have to confess, I really don't have much of a presentation. I didn't know I was going to be here till about 11 o'clock today. So if you have some questions on traffic, if anyone, I did talk to Councilwoman Hiller for quite a while last week to go over truck traffic and concerns about wear and tear on the roads and routing going down Croco and going down Rice. Researchers would tell their drivers to stay on 6th Street to get over to K4 or get over to Deer Creek and then down to I-70 to keep cars off of the
Are there questions?
streets.
It's clear.
Do you know the percentage of trucks that will go on 6th and then the percentage of trucks that come in and will head out 70 or 4?
Right now, there's about 3.5% truck volume on on 6th Street during the PM rush hour, or during the AM rush hour, actually. It's the heavier one. We're expecting that could go up to about 4.5%, maybe 5%.
And then heading out of town with how much?
Oh, directionally? Let's see. In the mornings, traffic on 6th Street is directional. In the mornings, you get about 50% going westwards toward the city, and then it flips in the afternoon for people going back. So, I'd prorate it based on that.
Like, do they have more trucks coming in from out of the city, or they have more trucks that are going to go between the two plants?
Geez, I'm not sure how to answer that. I think it's probably about equal amounts, because you have to have trucks to come in so that they can load up and, ship out, or other trucks that have to go back over to the plant on Deer Creek, so.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Heather Farias, followed by Sandra Campais.
My name is Heather Farias. I live on 431 Southeast Baldwin. I passed around pictures for you guys. They're basically just houses, but I know that some people want to downplay that this isn't a residential neighborhood, that there's a few houses, but it's mostly, a mixed match of industrial and light commercial. But it's really not. I mean, one flea market that we have is out of a red barn. I'm just reiterating that research can say, and I'm sure it will look very pretty. It'll be a pretty factory, but it's still a food processing plant. And a lot of these houses are going to be directly in front of that plant. And pretty or not, it does not change the fact that it's a food processing plant with distribution center. would you guys want to live right next door to it or across the street from it? I don't think you would. We're not saying, oh, Research is a bad company or anything like that. But what we are saying is it's a poor fit for an industrial because it is primarily a residential area. In their minimum of 1,000 feet, there's roughly 65 to 70 houses. And that's just falling in with their conservative minimum. A lot of them are, on Baldwin, we have 30 kids under the age of 15. It's all houses with families. And we've spoke about the traffic. We don't want the traffic, but it's just a poor fit for a residential. People have talked about how they want a win-win. But frankly, there is no win-win if it moves into this area. I think I speak for everyone when we say, we would love to see Research build somewhere else. We wouldn't have these issues if they were putting up a Walgreens or, a small coffee shop or anything like that. But this is an industrial site, and I keep repeating that, but I want to drive that fact home that that's the only reason we have a problem with this. It's a plant. We don't want to live right next door to a plant. And a lot of us feel like the rugs are getting swept out from under us, if that's the right term. This wasn't even zoned for industrial, in the last few years or anything like that. They're just wanting it now because Research wants it. And that's fair, but it's a residential area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Sandra Price, followed by Joseph Ledbetter.
Sandra Campisi, 416 Southeast Croco Road. And I'm a tad confused. Are we talking about the annexation?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the annexation.
All right. To the best of my knowledge, this is their Hillsboro plant, and this is Fairfax, North Carolina plant. And this is where I live. I live almost directly across the street from them. I have lived there for 24 years. Croco Road used to be the main thoroughfare between Topeka and North Topeka. And the reason I didn't want to move there initially because I was afraid of my children being ran over by cars and trucks and the such. So when K4 came in, I was happy that some of the traffic left. But like myself, I don't have a great car. I'll go down Croco Road to get to North Topeka because I don't want to go out of my way to get on K4 and around and then go back to North Topeka. There are a lot of cars and a lot of trucks that will wake me up with their room in the middle of the night. There's going to be more traffic. My house directly faces that field. They are going to have their shifts from 7 to 3 to 11 o'clock at night. You divide 140 people divided by 3, that's approximately 40 to 50 people that will be coming out. They can't all go one direction. They're all going to go on Croco Road. As for the water, when you guys had the red water about 5 years ago, we had red water. It was red water for like a month. Then there was water main breaks on each side of Croco Road. I don't know if they fixed it. I don't know if I don't use Topeka water. I have a filter. I don't trust it. After I get red water all the time, that just doesn't happen. There's just a sliver of Topeka, then you're going to have, it's going to be this plot, and then you're going to have it all the way to Rice Road. So are you guys going to eventually decide that all that's going to be Topeka? Research says that their plant has to be retooled, and it's on a floodplain. What happens if they decide that it costs too much money on that floodplain and they want to go where we are? It just seems too convenient. It seems too, hey, let's do this because Reese's here and there with their money. I would love a bakery. We don't even have a shopping center that's not 5 miles away. It's just too convenient, and it just doesn't seem sensible. And I love Topeka. I want Topeka to grow, but you're going to cut us off. We're not going to get, it's not going to grow. It's just going to die. And that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Joseph Ledbetter, to be followed by Jackie Steele.
Evening, governing body. My name is Joseph Ledbetter. I'm for this ordinance and the next 2 ordinances and for this project. The reason I'm for this project is because it's East Side jobs. It's a good employer that's got 1,100 jobs already here. They're going to add 180 jobs with this project. They're also going to spend $86 million on this site. Well, let's talk about what's already been spent in public infrastructure. Remember that the Oakland Expressway cost $44 million, and that was built within the last 15 years. Then there was a connection from the Oakland Expressway to I-70 that was built with Shawnee County sales tax money, one of the earlier sales taxes that we had, and that was about $20 million. Then, about 15 years ago, because of the increased traffic on 6th Street, with K4 and I-70 connection to the east, the state widened US 40, which is 6th Street, to 5 lanes. That cost about $15 million, as I recall. Then additionally, the city of Topeka put in a 12-inch water main out to this area. I don't have those costs. Then additionally, the city of Topeka at 6th and Rice Road put in a fire station about 15 years ago in anticipation of increased growth because of the Oakland Expressway and all of this infrastructure being spent on the east side. So the reason I'm for this is because it's time to get our return. It's time to get a return on this money. And it's time to get these jobs that we put the infrastructure in for. Now, one of the interesting arguments I heard about going north on Croco, it dead ends into Seward. I know this area very well. I grew up on the east side. So I doubt that you're going to have truck traffic going north to a dead end and then tying into I-70 when the most direct route to I-70 is 1 mile to the east down US 40. It is a highway, not a street, not a residential street. It is a highway. So the time to abandon this area, if you want to be just residential and never have business out there, would have been before the highway went in, which was probably 70 years ago. This area is conducive to industry. It is conducive to expanding jobs in East Topeka where we need the jobs the most. I would urge you to vote for this. I would urge you to vote for jobs and growth in Topeka and to vote for a return on our tax money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Jackie Steele, to be followed by Brad Pacey.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Steele, and I'm the Vice President of Business Retention and Expansion for Go Topeka. And as I looked over my notes, I started thinking about how, from an economic development professional standpoint, this is a huge win. There's some communities and some economic development professionals that would say this is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. A new state-of-the-art 300,000 square foot plant, plus rehabbing an existing structure, a company that's willing to invest $86.5 million in the community. That's huge. And then I got to the part about my notes that said 180 jobs. And I thought, 180 jobs, that's all about opportunity. That's 180 opportunities to pursue the American dream. 180 opportunities to provide for your family. And that's when it really hit me how kind of close to home this is for me. And to me, those 180 jobs are about a little girl that gets to have a yellow tutu, black tap shoes, and pink ballerina slippers. You see, I grew up in a small town in rural north central Iowa. My parents were two young kids who graduated high school and shortly thereafter had their first kid. By the time they were in their mid-20s, they had no college education, 3 young kids, no handouts from their family. But what they did have was their family, a strong work ethic, and the desire to build a better life and a desire to provide for their family. And as my brothers and I got older, that's when my mom said she was gonna go out into the workforce and have that opportunity. And as a young woman with no college education, where she got that opportunity was a company called Corbett. And that was a meat processing plant that was a few blocks from our house. And that's where my mom got a job. And to this day, I can still think about how she smelled a little bit like Little Smokies and barbecue sauce. But what I also remember is I got to take dance classes, and I had a yellow tutu, and it had yellow sparkles on the top, and I had black tap shoes that had a yellow ribbon that tied them together, and I had pink ballerina slippers. And as an adult now, when I look back and I think, if my mom hadn't had that opportunity to work in that meat processing plant, would I have been able to take dance classes? Would my brothers have been able to go to Cub Scouts? Probably not, because they were trying to make ends meet. But it was all about opportunity. And so when I look at this project, that's what I think. It's 180 opportunities to provide for your family, 180 opportunities to pursue the American dream. This is 180 opportunities for a little girl to have a yellow tutu, black tap shoes, and pink ballerina slippers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Brad Pacey.
Hello, my name is Brad Pacey. I am the Quality Assurance Director for Reese's Fine Foods. I've been with Reese's for a little over 21 years now, all of them in the Topeka community. So very much a part of the Topeka community, and I would very much appreciate continuing to be part of the Topeka community. I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to address some of the issues that have come up tonight. In furthering our commitment to be good neighbors, wanted to kind of address some of the questions that have come up by the council and by the community members. So one of the first issues that I'd like to address is truck traffic. There have been many questions about truck traffic. We expect that a majority of the truck traffic will go down 6th Street from the proposed facility to our distribution center that is at Deer Creek and 6th Street. All of the products, all of the finished products produced in this proposed facility will be transported to the distribution center and then ship out from there to customers. So a majority of that traffic will go down 6th Street. I'd also like to comment on, in my role as Quality Assurance Director, I've had the opportunity to be exposed to the new facility in Hillsboro, Oregon. And I'd like to comment that it is a very technologically advanced facility. Some of the newest and best food safety and safety technology has been implemented in that facility. And it's a very attractive facility from an architectural standpoint. So I think it is a great asset to the community to have that design standard incorporated into a project like this. So that is all I have at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Council, that completes the public comment on the issue. Is there further discussion? Yeah, this is just on the ordinance on the annexation. If seeing none, is there a motion for approval that we can? Councilwoman De La Isla moves to approve. Well, okay, did you? I'm sorry. All right.
Second.
Councilman DeLisa moves and Councilwoman Claire seconds. Now, is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
Be Ms. De La Isla and Jensen.
Do we need a third time?
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the ordinance for an annexation is approved. I suggest that we take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back and go on to the next item.